Floyd! Floyd! I'll knock you out! He's sick, look at him.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. A recent post from reigning unified minimum weight champion, one of two unified champions at minimum weight, Valle, who said, in English, so that people can understand me, I came to Orlando to finalize my unification bout, but it takes two to tango. No show from the champion. I know she's not afraid of me, but she is afraid of losing, so you all know I want all the titles. She doesn't. Pura vida!
So she claims that she was in Orlando this past weekend to finalize a fight with Senicia. We know Senicia is promoted by Top Rank, and Top Rank's headquarters is based out of Las Vegas, Nevada, not Orlando, Florida.
And Senicia, she's based out of Los Angeles, California. So where does Costa get that because Senicia wasn't in Orlando this past weekend, she's avoiding a fight with her? Was she supposed to be in Orlando this past weekend? Was there a meeting that she skipped out on? And even if she wasn't there, that doesn't stop you from signing the papers.
Doesn't stop you from signing the papers. You sign your end, she signs hers.
Well, she claims that Senicia wasn't there.
Are we living in a stone age? She doesn't have to be. You can fax her over her end of the papers, or she can come out at a later date and sign them. That doesn't mean that she's avoiding a fight.
These read like head games. When you take this kind of intel to the public and make it public, it's because you're trying to manipulate public perception and get ahead of it, ahead of whatever is going on in order to control the narrative. In the past, I've never been all that confident that a fight between Senicia and Costa would happen. If they do, they do, and if they don't, they don't. But one thing's for sure, I don't think it's Costa she has to worry about. The biggest threat for Senicia, anywhere at or around these weights, is the woman, the champion, the unified champion, that was in action this past weekend. The biggest threat to Senicia, anywhere at or around these weights, is Jessica Plata.
Not Costa. Costa's good. Very accomplished fighter. And if it were anybody else at minimum weight she'd be fighting, I would pick Costa to win. But against Senicia, Costa loses her belts. If that fight happens, Senicia goes undisputed at minimum weight.
Because it's not Costa she needs to be worried about. Costa's a great fighter, but she doesn't do anything better than Senicia Estrada. Whereas Jessica Plata, who's one division north, up there at light flyweight, where Senicia once held a belt, it's her she's got to worry about. You see, Jessica Plata from Mexico, one of two unified champions at that weight. She's durable, she's battle-tested, been in there with some big punchers, very big punchers, like Jessica Tutibab.
It's the only fighter at or around these weights that I think would have rivaled Senicia's speed, athleticism, and power, and skill. Jessica beat her. She beat her already. She beat her last year on the road.
She kicked off this year, taking a then unbeaten Kim Clavel's WBC title. Kim Clavel, a speedster, an agile mobile fighter with a lot of hand speed and a lot of foot speed. But she stayed in the pocket too long and paid for it, just like Sarah Borman did this past weekend. Jessica Plata has seen a lot of different fighters with a lot of different styles, and she's come out on top. She's having one hell of a run right now.
She's actually the biggest threat to Senicia right now, not Costa. The Costa Valle fight might be more publicized and more talked about, but that's not the biggest threat for Senicia.
What makes Jessica a threat to Senicia is that Jessica's durable. She's been in there with hard punchers, and she's a hard puncher herself. Don't confuse her with a knockout merchant. She doesn't knock many of these girls out, and she doesn't have that many recorded knockouts, but that doesn't mean she's not a hard puncher.
The counters are sweet. The uppercuts up the middle, the way she whips that left hook up top or downstairs.
They look at her and say, well, Senicia's a lot faster than she is, but so was Kim Clavel. This is not the fighter you string punches together with. This is not the fighter you stand in front of trying to get off your combinations. She's gonna punch you in between the punches and make you pay for it. That's what she did to Jessica, that's what she did to Kim Clavel, and that's what she might do to Senicia if she doesn't get the strategy right. The way to beat Jessica Plata is to box her.
1 and 2 punches at a time, very cautious, very economic, on the balls of your feet, playing at the angles and mindful of what comes back at you, because something will. She's gonna counter.
You don't string together combinations sitting on your punches with Jessica Plata. That's not the way to go. That's not how you beat her. You can't run her over. She's tough and she's strong, and she'll fight you back. She'll fight you off.
get it in your head that because you can throw punches in bunches and you have faster hands than she does, that you can stand right in front of her. That's just not a good idea.
Wasn't a good idea for Jessica Bopp, it wasn't a good idea for Kim Clavel, and it wasn't a good idea for Sarah Borman this past weekend. It wouldn't be a good idea for Senicia Estrada. The saving grace is that Senicia is a lot more malleable and layered than those fighters are. She's got a lot of tools. She's just got to use the right ones.
She'd have to peck away at Jessica. Boxer, 1 and 2 punches at a time, mindful of the counters.
Got enough speed in those hands to touch Jessica and get out the way. And because Senicia Estrada is a switch hitter, she can fight orthodox, she can fight southpaw. Fighting out of a shell guard. One arm is going to be protecting that midsection.
So she don't get the wind knocked out of her from those counter left hooks, those body shots.
The fight with Jessica seems to me a more difficult fight for Senicia than the Yokasta Valle fight would be. There's really nothing that Yokasta Valle does better than Senicia. That's not saying Yokasta's not a good fighter, a great fighter, because she is. She's just not better than Senicia, whereas Jessica Plata, she can push the envelope on Senicia.
Senicia's become accustomed to doing all the pushing, but Jessica Plata, she can push back.
Fight back. We'll see if the Valle fight actually happens. But if it doesn't, Senicia might move back up to light flyweight. And if she does, she might be so confronted with Jessica. If she is going to have her work cut out for her. In men's lightweight news this past Saturday, Jose Valenzuela, otherwise known as Rayo, avenged his loss to Chris Colbert and immediately called out Gervonta Davis, saying, "Tank, let's get it on, man. Let's give these people a great show." And it's being widely speculated that this could very well be Gervonta Davis's next opponent. 24-year-old lightweight contender called for a showdown with Gervonta Davis moments after his highlight reel knockout of Colbert in a 6th-round Saturday night at the Armory in Minneapolis. Valenzuela's victory over Colbert came in a WBA lightweight elimination match. And Davis holds the WBA's secondary title in the 135-pound division. Devin Haney still holds the primary. I believe he does.
Does he?
You know, everything happens for a reason, Valenzuela told Showtime's Jim Gray in the ring. I gotta thank God, you know. I was patient, but you know, I beat him twice now. This was a little eliminator, and you know, I want to fight for the title. So Tank Davis, let's get it on. Man, let's give these people a great show. This being in a WBA elimination match, that doesn't happen on its own. That doesn't happen by accident. That means behind the scenes, when they were doing this fight, it was with the intention of matching the winner against Gervonta, who's been WBA regular champion since 2019, roughly 4 years hanging on to a secondary title. And that's
so that as soon as the real title, the full title, goes vacant, Gervonta Davis can fight for it. And he's been waiting for that for at least 4 years now. If not him, his handlers. They didn't want him to challenge Loma for the belt when he had it, or Teofimo, or George, or Devin.
For 4 years, they've been waiting for that title to go vacant so that Gervonta can challenge one of their boys for it. And it looks like it might be Rayo. Rayo, who said, "I think I'm ready. You know, I put my heart and soul into this, and I beat Colbert twice. I think I deserve it." Valenzuela also dismissed Colbert's contention that they should fight a third time because they're 1-1 in 2 bouts. I don't think the fans want to see that, Valenzuela said, you know. I beat him twice, you know. I'm grateful for him giving me the rematch, but I don't think they want to see that, and they don't. By all rights, Rayo won the first fight, and they screwed him on the cards. That was my take on that. So he closed the show and took it out of the judges' hands in the second fight. And this being a WBA eliminator, I reiterate, that doesn't happen by accident. That happens by design. It might be their intention to put Gervonta Davis against another tall, long guy that steps into his shots.
Another guy like Leo Santa Cruz, another guy like Mario Barrios, another guy like Rolly Romero, another flawed fighter who's going to give Gervonta every countering opportunity he needs.
And what is Gervonta's haphazard homage to the career of Floyd Mayweather? Floyd fought a lot of Hispanic fighters in his career, with the difference being that the Hispanic fighters that he fought, they were somebodies. They were somebodies at the time. You're talking about Miguel Cotto, a big draw amongst the Puerto Ricans, Juan Manuel Marquez, Canelo Alvarez. People in this generation of fight fans think it was Mayweather just giving Canelo an opportunity, when the only reason he fought him is because he was drawing well and he was a somebody at the time. He knew Canelo Alvarez moves the needle, and a fight with him would do great numbers at the box office, which it did. That's why Floyd fought that guy. And Floyd fought a lot of Hispanic fighters. during his career. They're trying to replicate that with Gervonta, with the difference being that the Hispanic fighters that he fights...
Most of those guys are nobodies.
Almost all of those guys are nobodies. The only draw that he fought was a Hispanic fighter, was Ryan. And we saw what difference that made. That's the only pay-per-view Gervonta Davis has been in that sold over 1 million buys. The rest of them didn't even crack 500,000 buys. And he won't fighting Isaac again or Rayo.
The matchmaking for Gervonta Davis is very obvious if you're observant. If you pay attention, they always match him against guys that he doesn't have to chase. Guys who step into their jab to bring other punches over, so Gervonta can catch them in between the punches. Whether you're talking about Leo Santa Cruz, Mario Barrios, Rolly Romero, or Ryan Garcia, or Rayo in March.
They won't match him against boxers. Pure boxers. I wonder, if Chris Colbert had won on Saturday instead of Rayo, would Chris Colbert be in the running for a Gervonta Davis fight? Because Chris is a very different fighter to the fighters that Gervonta Davis fights.
He's a pure boxer. I wouldn't say he's a very good pure boxer. I don't think he's on the level of a Shakur Stevenson or a Devin Haney. He's certainly not as accomplished as those fighters are, but he does have the same base style. He's just operating at a much lower level than they are.
And I just wonder, if it were him that won this past Saturday, would they push to make the fight between Chris and Gervonta? Because it would be a sharp deviation from the kind of opponents they put in the ring with Gervonta.
Gervonta, whose entire career is a haphazard homage to the Mayweather era, to Mayweather's career. Yes, Floyd fought a lot of Hispanic fighters, and he made a lot of money doing it, sold a lot of pay-per-views. But the Hispanic fighters that he fought, they were somebodies. A lot of these guys Gervonta fights, they're nobodies.
Guys ain't Oscar De La Hoya that he's fighting. They're not Juan Manuel Marquez. They're not Canelo. Anybody that lived in that era and watched his career as it happens would know that. These younger guys who only started watching boxing in the last 5 or 6 years or so will tell you about Floyd is what they heard third hand or what they watched on YouTube. They weren't there. They didn't witness it. Their point of reference.
You don't know shit about Floyd, and you don't know shit about boxing. That's why you liken Gervonta Davis's career to Floyd's career, because you didn't actually witness it.
They like to throw around that quote that was immortalized by the late Roger Mayweather, downing fighters like Julio Cesar Chavez for being a Mexican fighter, not realizing Julio beat Roger's ass.
You do realize that, right? And you do realize that Roger himself had a lot of respect for Julio Cesar Chavez, unlike these millennials and Gen Zers that think they know anything about boxing.
Actually beat Roger 2 times, once in 1985, then again in 1989. Which is neither here nor there, it's all ancient history. In this conversation, it really is centered around Gervonta Davis and the obvious matchmaking, the rationale behind it. They don't put him in the ring with guys that he has to chase. Guys who can manage the distance. They put him in there with guys who close it for him so he doesn't have to chase them, and that sets them up for big counters. They like to call Gervonta Davis tank, but he doesn't fight like one. He doesn't come forward taking punches to give punches. Rather, he's a booby trap. He's more of a booby trap than a tank.
Put him in there with guys who step into their shots, which sets them up to be countered, like what we saw in the Leo Santa Cruz fight, the Mario Barrios fight, the Ryan Garcia fight, the Rolly Romero fight, the Hector Luis Garcia fight. I mean, you name it. He's waiting for the guys to step into their shots, mid-range to inside, so he can catch them clean.
Guys that step into their jab as opposed to staying behind it, like Devin Haney or Shakur Stevenson would. These are guys who manage the distance and keep distance. They don't just close it, throwing caution to the wind, which could make things very difficult for a counterpuncher, an economic puncher like Gervonta. He's not a pressure guy. He's not a volume guy. In a round, he doesn't actually throw that many punches until he gets the counter off. And if he doesn't get the counter off, he moves lateral, stays on the outside, and waits for the opportunity. With those kinds of fighters, like a Devin Haney,
the opportunity may not come because Devin's got a bit of height on Gervonta, a bit of length, and he's got speed of his own. To box comfortably from the outside, behind the jab, managing the distance, not closing it. That's the key. That's the key to beating Gervonta. And the matchmakers know that.
That's why they won't put him in there with Devin. you know, they'll hide behind weight stipulations when it comes to Devin, and when it comes to a fighter that is fighting at his own weight, at 135, Shakur Stevenson, they'll just pretend that Shakur's a nobody, he doesn't draw, while fighting guys who are less known than Shakur, less skilled, less accomplished than Shakur. That if you're gonna say something like Shakur's a nobody, well, who the hell is Rayo?
Huh?
Who the hell is Isaac?
Who the hell were Rolly Romero and Mario Barrios?
My previous video, we talked about Bill Haney's offer to Gervonta Davis, an estimated $20 million that Eddie Hearn himself confirmed. There's legitimate foreign interest in doing a fight between Gervonta and Devin, and people are scratching their heads that Gervonta, who's supposed to be the money man, would leave that much money on the table, all to avoid fighting Devin?
Yes.
Many of Gervonta Davis's fans, as strange as this might sound, are not actually boxing fans.
Huh?
If he were to lose, if his unblemished record were to be blemished, they wouldn't root for him as hard because he's intended to be an homage to Mayweather's career, and we all know Floyd retired undefeated.
And Gervonta, he can't be an homage to Floyd if he is defeated, so there goes the Mayweather angle. I mean, a lot of the fame, a lot of the notoriety that Gervonta Davis got at the start of his career was because Floyd was promoting him, because this was Floyd's fighter intended to be the next Floyd.
And all that goes out the window if he loses. He can't be baby Floyd if he is defeated. The bubble would then burst. So why gamble on the Stevensons and Haneys of the world when you can make decent money, all right money, fighting in safe fight after safe fight after safe fight against opponents that are all cut from the same cookie cutter? This actually fools people.
He's fighting Hispanic fighters just like Floyd did.
Not saying that Floyd didn't. He definitely fought a lot of Hispanic fighters in his time, but those weren't the only kind of fighters that he fought. He did fight Shane Mosley, and that pay-per-view sold about 1 million, I believe it was. He fought Ricky Hatton from the United Kingdom. That was also a very big fight. Just so happens that some of the fighters that Floyd fought were Hispanic, and that added a lot of commercial value to those fights. You don't see that same commercial value in all of Gervonta Davis's fights because, well, most of the Hispanic fighters that he fights are nobodies.
And Floyd fought the somebodies. Some of them happened to be Hispanic.
And some of them weren't. But if Floyd was really as big a draw as he was, it's because he was fighting the somebodies of that era. Gervonta Davis, for the most part, fights the nobodies of this one.
It's gotten so ridiculous over time that I would genuinely expect Gervonta to fight in a shameless crossover fight against a UFC guy like Sean O'Malley, then roll the dice with Devin or roll the dice with Shakur. I have no aspirations, no hope of seeing those fights happen because the matchmakers, they know what they're doing and why.
I don't think you can offer him enough money to fight the likes of a Devin Haney, no. Though if he ever did, I'd have Devin beating him. Beating him on points.
Shakur, too.
The key to beating Gervonta is very obvious. It's managing the distance and keeping distance, not closing it. And that's why the matchmaking is always the same.
For him.
Huh?